Hello, and welcome to my annual summer reading roundup. This is what I read in the summer of 2024. I hope everyone had a great summer. I had a really good summer, and last night I sort of closed it off by going to see Dogstar live in concert. If you don't know, that is Keanu Reeves' band. He is a bassist. They're really good. And it was so fun to go to a concert, went with some of my best people, had a lot of fun, and just seemed like an appropriate shirt with the design here for the end of summer because it's still, of course, incredibly hot outside here in Utah. But we're going to start pretending it's fall. But basically, for those of you who don't know, I always did this on my blog. And from Memorial Day to Labor Day. I call that my summer reading, and I try to see how many books I can read in that time. And I always highlight like what books I read and what books I especially loved. And the complete list of every book that I read is going to be on my blog, actually. I read 48 books over the summer, either audiobooks, physical books, or reading aloud to my kids, physical books. And so all I have here with me are the ones that I own or that are not like digital audiobooks to show off to you. So I'll put the complete list up on the old blog at jessicadaygeorge.com. So let's get started with what am I reading right now? What I'm reading right now, aloud to the kids, is Wolfstalker, which is a mystery set in Yellowstone National Park by Gloria Skrzynski and Elaine Ferguson. This has been really fun and also kind of funny because it was written in the mid 1990s, and their mom, because of her job, has a cell phone. And so the kids are just kind of chuckling about that. It has terrible reception, and also we're kind of laughing about the fact that they have any reception at all in Yellowstone, because actually the national parks kind of block cell phone reception for whatever reason. And so we're like, how are they calling it all? But anyway, it's really cute. It's kind of interesting. Somebody is claiming that the wolves that have just been reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park are getting out of the park and killing livestock and pets. And so these kids, whose mom is a wildlife veterinarian, are like trying to solve this mystery. It's really fun. We're really enjoying it. We're about halfway through. I am reading to myself The True Deceiver by Tove Jansson, who, as you know, writes the Moomin books. This is one of her adult novels. It is very unusual and very fascinating so far. I'm about halfway through. It's quite a short book, very odd, and I really like it. Very Scandinavian, my goodness. It's been snowing for months. It's just snowing, and people are having to deliver groceries on skis. Incredibly Scandinavian. I'm also listening to the audiobook of Friday's Child by Georgia Hare, which I am almost done with. This is probably the second or third time I've listened to this one. It's a favorite of mine, but wanted something just kind of light and fluffy to listen to for a couple of days. Also, over the summer, I finished reading aloud to the kids the Dark is Rising sequence. So we read The Gray King over the summer, and also Silver on the Tree, which we just finished. And overall, my 19-year-old really likes this series. He's read them all before. He really enjoyed them. My 15-year-old, she really liked it. My 12-year-old was not as into it, which I thought he would be, but he said that it was kind of because we're reading it aloud that he wasn't like able to follow the story as well. And also a lot of the Arthurian mythology, the Arthurian folklore, was not something that he knew a lot about. So going into it, if you're going to read it aloud and stuff, maybe take those things into consideration. I think they are fabulous. And personally, to me, reading them to yourself, always highly recommend. But just diving into more stuff, picked up The Mighty Bite this summer by Nathan Hale, a scientific but also humorous graphic novel about a trilobite and his friends, who are all real creatures, real like deep sea or Cretaceous or Cenozoic. Honestly, not 100% sure about that. Creatures living at the bottom of the ocean and just like their adventures, which are hilarious. And the second one, The Mighty Bite, Walrus Brawl at the Mall, which just came out and I loved even more. Some of the plot is based on a blog story that Nate did several years ago called Pinniped Party, which is one of my favorite things I've ever seen him do, about basically pinnipeds, seals, walruses, and things sort of ganging up on other animals. It's really hilarious to me. Also, speaking of graphic novels, we have School Trip, a new kid book by Jerry Craft, which I really enjoyed. I love school trip stories. I went on a really interesting school trip when I was in high school, and I've loved seeing like what other schools do and kids interacting with that. It takes me back to my days on a school trip, basically. Just finished this myself, Murder Your Employer, and the McMaster's Guide to Homicide by Rupert Holmes. This was delightful and surprising. I really didn't know much about it. I loved the design of it. I loved the title, but was not sure what else to expect. Was not expecting a historical setting, was not expecting how dark it was, but also really hilarious, but also very dark, and was not expecting the fact that Rupert Holmes is the guy who wrote and recorded the Pina Colada song. That's just, I can't stop talking about, I can't stop telling people, you know, the Pina Colada song, like the Escape, I guess is the official name. Anyway, remember that song about that guy cheating on his wife with his wife? Like, he wrote a murder mystery. I entertain myself. The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek by Kim Michelle Richardson, sorry. Kim Michelle Richardson, really enjoyable historical fiction about two things that always fascinated me. One, the blue people of Kentucky, and then also the traveling like bookwomen, the traveling librarians that rode on horseback around into the mountains and the coves and delivered books to people during the Depression, which is a fascinating program that I just love. There's also a picture book about it called That Book Woman, which is really great for explaining it to younger kids. This was solidly for adults and really enjoyable. The Merciful Crow by Margaret Owen. I knew a lot about this. I've met Margaret. She's a delightful person. Had not yet read this. My sister just read the first two, The Merciful Crow and The Faithless Hawk, and gave me her copy and was like, you've got to read these. They're so fun. Really different magic system that I really enjoyed. And the caste system of their world was really intriguing. Majestica, a highlight of the summer, honestly, by Sarah Tolkser. Just came out, just read it, about a world where it sort of looks like ours around World War One, like circa World War One England or something like that. And there is a hotel called Majestica that is on a preserve for magical creatures. So people who can afford to go and take these train safaris around to see unicorns and dragons and Trigers, which is a three-headed tiger. And of course, these three kids get sort of stranded in the wilderness when everything goes wrong on their safari. And really cool. The creatures, really fun, kind of a surprising twist ending. I haven't seen any signs of it, but I'm really hoping it's a series. Would love that. The Danish Secret to Happy Kids by Helen Russell. Helen Russell wrote The Year of Living Danishly, which I absolutely adored, about she and her husband moving, they thought, for just 1 year to Denmark from London, and their experiences there. And she just started studying how the Danes do things differently. How do they live differently? Highly recommend The Year of Living Danishly, but also highly recommend this. I wish that I had had this book years ago when my kids were younger. I'm like, it's too late for you guys now. But just the way the Danes parent is so different from the way we see things in the US. And there are drawbacks. There are some things that aren't as great, and she's very honest about that. But there are some things that I'm like, I wish I had taken that tact. I wish I'd done that with my kids. And there are things that I'm still, even though my youngest is 12, that I'm like, I'm still going to start implementing this into my own parenting. They raise their kids very independently. They raise their kids to like, yes, you can go to the store at this age and things like that. Like, here are clear instructions and here are clear parameters and here you go. And I'm like, I wish I'd done that with my kids more, and I'm going to start doing it more to give them more confidence in some things. So Danish Secret to Happy Kids, really, really good parenting advice. This is a new graphic novel or like series of comics called The Magic Order by Mark Miller, Olivier Coipel, I guess that's how you say that name. And it is the first actual comic series produced by Netflix. So I guess they have a publishing branch. I'm not 100% sure. Kind of unusual story. And I got kind of mad towards the end because the one character that I really liked turned out to be the bad guy. And I was not a fan of that. So, but really unusual. And it reminded me, Mark Millar also did the Jupiter's Legacy, which Netflix did make a TV series out of. Um, and I did enjoy. And I actually liked these comics better than I liked the actual Jupiter's Legacy comics. So if you like that style, Mark Millar style and stuff like that, that was all like superheroes and what do they do? And this is all like secret magic order and what do they do? Like how do they keep the peace around the world without us regular people knowing and stuff? It was a very interesting premise. And I really do love the art. Oh, but the Spellshop. Is this my favorite book from this summer? It might very well be my favorite book from this summer. The Spellshop by Sarah Beth Durst. Absolutely just the most charming book that I have read in a long time. It is a cozy fantasy, a cozy romance as well, very light on the spice. In fact, not at all spicy, so to speak. Just wonderful. A young assistant librarian at a big like magical library in the big city of some fantasy world. When there is a revolution, she rescues as many books as she could. Also, her assistant, who is a sentient spider plant, and they head back to her family's tiny little cottage on a tiny little island, and they try to make over this overgrown cottage into a jam shop. It's so charming, I can't even tell you. Also, just a beautiful book. I mean, come on now. I can't recommend that highly enough, though. My friend Sarah Beth Durst did it, and it's wonderful. The Paper Daughters of Chinatown by Heather B. Moore. Wonderful historical fiction-ish, sort of a fictionalized biography a bit, or kind of more nonfiction than fiction, to be honest, about oh my gosh, Donaldina. I'm like Ronald, and that's not right. Donaldina Cameron, a Scottish woman but raised in the US who uh, took on sort of the guardianship of all these girls who were brought over illegally from China when there was a no Chinese immigration law in the US. And so these girls were being brought over on false pretenses, being told they were going to be adopted or married to someone, and they were in fact basically sold into slavery in Chinatown in San Francisco. And this woman heard about this, went for 1 year to do some service at this mission home, ended up staying, becoming the director, worked there for 30 years, changed so many lives. Such an interesting book. And she looks at it from the perspective both of Donaldina and some of the women that she helped. And there are journal entries, there are letters, all this stuff. So it's very, very historically grounded. Really excellent. And ditto this, The Book of Lost Friends by Lisa Wingate, also a historical fiction about a very serious topic that is essentially the Lost Friends was a column that a newspaper used to run post-Civil War that would help people reconnect with their friends and family who had been enslaved, who had been, separated from each other. You could write into this paper and say like, this is what I remember, this is where I used to live, this is my family's name, this is how old they would be roughly, and I am looking for my lost friends. And so she uses those real newspaper articles as a framework for a story both set just post Civil War and then also in the 1980s with someone sort of uncovering the later legacy of this happening. Really excellent. I listened to the audiobook as well, and really there were a couple of readers really enjoyed their voices, and their reading of it was excellent. Finished off Marie Brennan's excellent series, The Memoirs of Lady Trent, with the Labyrinth of Drakes, and Within the Sanctuary of Wings. Loved how she wrapped up this series. If you don't know, these are sort of lady explorer stories about an intrepid woman scientist in a time when that was an unusual thing in their world, just like it was in our world at roughly a similar time period. and she goes about trying to figure out the origins of certain dragon breeds and their nature, and also this ancient society that has disappeared that they call the Draconians. And, what was their language? They find like a Rosetta Stone at one point and are able to unlock the language. There's some very discreet and demure romance in them. They're illustrated by Lady Trent. It's really excellent. Love the series to pieces. Um, the Memoirs of Lady Trent by Marie Brennan. And it's a 5-book series. It's complete, and I have finally completed it and love them. Also love this. Cannot wait for the second one that comes out in a few weeks. Cinda Williams Chima, Children of Ragnarok, the Runestone Saga. This is the first book in it. Read this on vacation. Had like there are pictures of me now at the beach with like the tide coming in to sweep me away, but I am just like so absorbed in this book. It is sort of a alternate world where post Ragnarok, this is what's been happening to people, and it's got everything I love, Viking ships and just all the stuff and prophecies and Nordic gods and like all that stuff. This is good stuff. Love this book so much. I believe it is considered YA. I would certainly give it to a teenager. So Lois Lowry's latest book, Tree Table Book, beautiful story, slim little volume. Love Lois Lowry's writing, always have, always will. And this is a fantastic book, which I got signed, about a friendship between two women named Sophie. One of the Sophies is a little girl, one of the Sophies is an older woman, and they have a lot of things in common. And so the younger Sophie is trying to help the older Sophie pass the upcoming test she's got to determine if she can still live on her own in her home where she's happy, or if she's having some memory problems. And it's a really beautiful, really sweet story. And then also has a lot of older Sophie's reminiscences about what life was like for her in Poland at the start of World War II. Really great. The Swifts, a dictionary of scoundrels by Beth Lincoln, illustrated by Claire Powell. Absolutely love this book. Of course, I am a sucker for a Barnes & Noble special edition. This has a cool maze because that's important to the story on the sides. This book about this very unusual family who are all named after just random words in the dictionary, and then they struggle with like, is their nature, is their personality determined by their name, or do they sort of grow into it to fit it? Really different. A lot of sort of Westing game vibes, I'm going to say. I've heard it compared to Mysterious Benedict Society, but I have not read that yet. Really love this, though. There's a second one out I'm very excited about. Really fun British middle grade book. Read that aloud to the kids, and we all really loved that. Finish off the Tristan Strong trilogy. Thoroughly enjoyed. Tristan Strong Keeps Punching and Tristan Strong, Destroys the World. This is actually 2. This is 3. This is a really fun series based on African American folklore, ancient stories. We've got Anansi the Trickster, John Henry, all those types of characters, Brer Rabbit, Brer Bear, that's part of the Rick Riordan Presents series. And this is Tristan Strong, modern day kid, dealing with these things, dealing with trickster gods, dealing with the diaspora of, people fleeing from the South after the Civil War, and like where their stories ended up, where their families ended up, and all those things. Really fun, really different, magical, covers a lot of both like US history, deals with some heavy topics like racism, but does them in a really great way that doesn't leave you thinking like, oh, that's really heavy for a kid's book. No, it's really good for a kid's book is what it is. So those are the books that I still have with me at home that are some of my top books that I read this summer. I recommend all of them, or I would not have shown them to you. And if you want the full list of everything I read this summer, which included a bunch of delightful audiobooks of P.G. Wodehouse novels like The Clicking of Cuthbert, that will all be on my blog. So happy reading. Hope you are gearing up for some spooky fall reads, because I know I am. I will see you next week.